is Royal Rumble weekend, and I've got a lot to say about the 2012 Royal Rumble, which is not the 25th anniversary of the Royal Rumble. I already covered this with WrestleMania 25, so I won't elaborate any further. But that said, I do have a lot to say about the Royal Rumble, specifically the match itself. And as I've said before, the Royal Rumble is one of the coolest attractions in wrestling, mainly because it is sort of like the playoffs to WrestleMania, and it kind of sets everything in motion to what is supposed to be the Super Bowl of professional wrestling. It kicks off the season, which it has that appeal to it, and it is the most sports-like thing that the WWE does. They did this great video package on Raw this week, and I think they've done it before, where they tell the story of the Royal Rumble through the numbers, like listing all the stats, like who has the most eliminations, who's been in the longest, which numbers produce the most winners, and everything like that. So it has that aspect to it. And for those that say that stats would be too confusing in wrestling, like keeping track of win-loss records and things of that nature, for those that say that that would be too confusing and too hard to follow for wrestling fans, the Royal Rumble, to me, every year is proof against that. Because everybody gets excited about the Royal Rumble and talking about all these things. And the great thing about statistics in real sports is that it drives discussions about the product. Like, I could spend hours upon hours talking about football, just talking about the stats, and use the stats as a way to move the conversation along and stuff like that. And that's what the Royal Rumble has, more than anything else that the WWE does. Once they get past the Rumble and, Taker's streak, numbers don't mean aren't worth a hill of beans, but, the Royal Rumble definitely has that going for it, and that's why it's a worthwhile attraction every year. And I am going to be watching it tomorrow night. I am ordering the pay-per-view. I'm really only going to talk about the Rumble match because I want to keep this video at least somewhat short, and the rest of the matches would just make the video too long. And then the Rumble is good enough in of itself to talk about. I could not find a list of all the participants, which was interesting because normally there is a full list. I've heard of names that are going to be in it. I know Miz is going in at number 1 because of what happened on Raw. So Truth is obviously going to be in it as well. God, who else? We know Jericho's going to be in it. We know Foley's going to be in it. I read a report today that said that Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Road Warrior Animal, and Road Dogg Jesse James are all going to be in it, which is, it's okay. They get their nostalgia pop. That's fine. It's a 30-man match. I don't mind, nostalgia pops and things like that in a 30-man match. I'm okay with that. And I am glad that they shortened it back down to 30 because I felt like the WWE's roster last year was definitely not strong enough for a 40-man match. It was not at all. WCW 97, they did World War III, and yes, World War III was a clusterfuck, although the setup looked cool with the 3 rings. The match itself was a clusterfuck, but they could do a 60-man match because of how strong their roster was. WWF in 2000, they could have done a 40-man Rumble. They kind of did in 2000 because they had a lot of the lower card guys that got snubbed for being entered, so they did run-ins throughout the Rumble, like the Mean Street Posse and Taka, had a bad fall in that match. But that roster, the 2000 WWF roster, was strong enough to do a 40-man Rumble. This one is not. I remember watching it last year, and I'm like, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. That guy still has a job. Who knew? Oh, look, a leprechaun. Yay. So the 40-man Rumble didn't really do it for me, and I felt like it dragged, so I'm glad that they shortened it back down to 30. But it is interesting to me that there is no official list of who's going to be in it, so I don't know if that means they're going to pull a shock. Now, one thing that they have talked about with this Rumble, and it struck me as kind of strange, is that all superstars will be permitted to enter. Or so, I don't remember exactly how they worded it, but they said something like that, which is strange to me because I didn't know there were any restrictions on who could be in it. And I heard that, I was like, I'm pretty sure 2 women have been entrants in the past. A leprechaun and Drew Carey have all been entrants in the Royal Rumble. I wasn't aware that there were any restrictions on who could enter the Royal Rumble. I didn't know. So, okay, there were no restrictions this year. But what it made me think of, and maybe I'm just overthinking and overanalyzing it, but what it made me think of, the only real restriction on who can enter the Rumble are the world champions. They can't enter the Rumble. So that makes me wonder, is a world champion going to enter the Rumble in an interesting loophole try to win the Rumble so that he doesn't have to defend the title at Mania, or set up a unification match at the at WrestleMania. I think is interesting. Like, let's say Daniel Bryan retains the title in the cage match, enters himself in the Royal Rumble, and then wins it, and then goes on to face Punk in a unification match at WrestleMania, which, if you want to make the internet cream their pants, that might just do it. They will jizz all over their keyboards if it's Punk and Daniel Bryan for both belts at WrestleMania. And I think it'd be an interesting match to have, because, I think we're going to get Taker and Triple H again. We've already got Rock and Cena, and that's going to be the main event. So you've got your marquee matches, so, why not do one, just a pure work rate type of match, to make the net fans happy. But yeah, it'll be interesting if they try something like that. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they should. I'm just thinking maybe I'm just overthinking this with the whole anybody can enter the Rumble type deal that they're trying to sell. So we'll see how that goes. That will be interesting. If I did have to pick a Royal Rumble winner, it would have to be Chris Jericho. Because I'm trying to think of anybody else who's in it. Foley's not going to win it. I wouldn't think Foley would win it. Miz definitely isn't going to win it. R-Truth, no. Sheamus, I doubt it. Randy Orton, maybe. Barrett, maybe. I think if one of the SmackDown guys wins it and then they go for the SmackDown title, that would be kind of boring. I think Jericho's the best option, because this new character he's doing is at least getting people talking. And I think people, whether they like the segments or not, they're kind of waiting to see what the direction is of it. So, and Jericho's a big name who hasn't won the Rumble before, so why not? Yeah, give him, see what happens, and execute whatever plan it is that you have. So yeah, he's my number one pick, but I wouldn't be surprised. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if Orton won it, although, again, I think it would be boring. And I do think that, and going back to my whole idea with the unification thing, that also might be wishful thinking on my part, because I hate the idea of having two world champions. And I do feel like the Royal Rumble has been somewhat diluted by the fact that there are two world titles. Last year, let's go back the last few years. Okay, last year Del Rio wins it, which I don't think should have happened, because I have no faith in him as a main event character at all. And then he goes for the secondary title, and then that turns into an opening match where he jobs to Edge. I was like, all right, so the Royal Rumble really didn't mean a whole lot there. It was just kind of a throwaway thing. And the bigger match was the one that The Rock was attached to. 26, the Rumble winner was Edge. He faced Jericho. There was no title change, and it was the secondary title match to Cena and Batista. 2009, it was won by Orton. He got the main event with Triple H, but got jobbed out horribly in one of the worst Mania main events ever, only to win it a month later in a six-man tag match, so the Rumble felt pointless there. 08, Cena won it. Then he cashed in his title shot in February, which I didn't know that was a rule. I didn't know that was possible, but okay. Begs the question why nobody else has done it before or since. It was like, if you want your title shot, just take it now, And then he lost at that pay-per-view, and then he lost again at Mania, which got turned into a three-way with Triple H somehow. Then in 07, Taker won the Rumble, beat Batista, and yeah, it wasn't the main event, but it felt like it was the main event anyway. Even though it didn't close, it did feel like more of a main event than Shawn and Cena did. So that one was fine, no problem there. 2006, okay, this one was messed up. Ray won it, then he lost the title shot to Orton in February, and then a week later on SmackDown, they made it a three-way with Ray thrown back in. Makes no sense, and it made the two pay-per-view matches feel completely pointless, but there you go. And I think that was the last time. Yeah, I mean, WrestleMania 20 was a three-way, but I thought they set that up really well by introducing the loophole that Benoit could jump brands. And I think they very naturally created the three-way there, so that wasn't like a devaluing the Royal Rumble type of thing. So the Royal Rumble in recent years has been kind of devalued in that aspect, and I think having two world titles, just in general, being world champion doesn't mean as much. If you're holding the world heavyweight title, the SmackDown title, to me you're just kind of top of the mid-card, because that's not the main event belt. And they can call it a world title all they want, but I still kind of view it as a mid-card title. But it dilutes the WWE title because you have another guy running around claiming to be world champion, so you have two guys that can lay claim to being the best, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Again, going back to football, it would be like if after Championship Sunday, the Giants are the NFC champions, yay, and the Patriots are the AFC champions, and then there's no Super Bowl. Who the fuck wants that? So no, I want to know who the number one best team in the NFL is. I want to have a number one best team. If the Giants lose, so be it. I still want to find out, and I want to root for them to be the best. Having 2 world champions, having 2 number 1 guys, to me makes no sense. Especially since the brand extension is dead anyway. I love people talking about, like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen in the draft, and, oh, Punk's going to get traded to SmackDown, and so, like, who gives a fuck? They appear on both shows anyway. I mean, there is no brand extension. It's a lie. It's imaginary. It doesn't exist. I heard that WWE dropped bragging rights again. I heard they put it back on the pay-per-view schedule, and then they dropped it again, which, if they had done that again now, in the current climate of things, that would have just been hilarious. Because, I mean, you want to talk about meaningless gimmicks. There you go. But, yeah, I would like for them to unify the titles, and maybe my idea of Daniel Bryan winning the Rumble and then setting up a match with Punk at Mania is just wishful thinking to do that, which, again, I think they should. But, yeah, I'm picking Jericho to win the Rumble, and I think that would be a good move. I don't like any of the SmackDown red herrings, and I think they are just red herrings. And that's nothing against Sheamus or Orton. I don't like Barrett, but I just don't see them winning the Rumble as being that big of a deal or providing that big of a WrestleMania match. I think Punk and Jericho would be a good match to have at WrestleMania, especially since there is kind of this Attitude Era versus New Generation thing that they have. This theme that they have going for the Royal Rumble, especially with the Rock and Cena match. So we'll see if that continues. And I would be in favor of a unification match at WrestleMania as well. So, again, we'll see how that turns out, and hopefully they do pick a good Royal Rumble winner this year, and hopefully it turns out to be a really good pay-per-view. Personally, I mean, for the rest of the matches, with the 2 title matches, Punk and Ziggler's okay. I think the match will be great. It's just that I don't care about this whole Punk versus the Evil Boss thing, which we've seen a cajillion times. It has nothing to do with Punk as a performer or has anything to do with Ziggler. It's just I just don't care about the angle. It would be okay if they had done it with Austin and Vince, and then we never saw the Evil Boss thing again for 15 years. But the Evil Boss thing's just been a constant for the whole time, and it's just, okay, here we go again, you know, type of thing. I guess the cage match will be okay. Kane and Cena, I applaud them for not blowing the match off at the last pay-per-view, which they easily could have done. They could have just rushed Kane and Cena to TLC, but they actually decided to build it up a little bit. Some of the build-up's been a little hokey, but, you know, at least they're trying. Yeah, I'll give them that. So I do think the Royal Rumble will be a good show, and I'm looking forward to the Rumble match just to see. Because, again, the fact that there's no list of entrants intrigues me. We can only go by what's been announced on TV, so maybe there'll be some big surprise that we're not aware of. So, yeah, Jericho is my number 1, and a complete off chance if they do the whole thing with Daniel Bryan. That would be interesting, too. But that's my talk on the Royal Rumble. I will be back next week to talk about the fallout of the Royal Rumble and maybe a little Super Bowl discussion, too, because obviously I'm very excited for the Super Bowl this year. So until then, peace out.